Uruche. Thank you very much, Mr. Uruche, for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having us once more.
Well, watching of that video there now and looking at the amount of destruction there is really disheartening. But for manufacturers, to what extent were they affected?
Well, we are still comparing the effect of attacks on our members, but I know that Idu Industrial Estate in Abuja had it rough with the protestants. They vandalized a lot of machines, equipment, scattered away a lot of stocks at their warehouses. Imagine doors, frames, and windows being scattered away. For what? They are not palliatives. We were affected, many of our members. I was also told a company in Jos that they were about to attack, and the company came in and defended themselves, protested. The same thing happens in Ilori and all over the country. We are still putting together our statistics on how our members were affected.
Okay, to get perhaps to quantify the amount, basically, that may have been. We heard a lot of those business owners talking about millions that they would have probably, lost. Now, do you think perhaps this kind of situation could have been avoided?
Well, it could have been avoided if there is a security on ground to monitor the affairs of other parts of the ENDSARS. I believe there are two sets of that protesters. One requesting for reforms on Nigerian police, and the other 5-point agenda, while others are also, criticizing the ENDSARS protesters and attacking them. And if that would have been nipped at the bud, it would not escalate to this level.
Yeah. Now, what do you think can be done to mitigate the losses suffered by your members and, of course, other businesses? I mean, even though the Lagos state government has made some promises, but for you as an association, do you think there's any way the government can also support?
Let me start by commending the banks, the financial institutions that come up with policies to encourage those that have lost their properties to come and then assess interest-free loans. I will also appeal to other bankers to see how they can also support that with funds. But what most of our people affected needs now is grants and not loans. But loans will help them to build up their lives. So if government can provide a trust funds for those affected to take advantage of the funds and then restart their lives to be of good.
No, but for some of them that are already, gotten some loan from government, and perhaps the issue now would be how to pay back.
That's where government should come in to give them a waiver of that facility they have collected that we are vandalized. Loan forgiveness happens here and there. And I appeal to if government will look at it and see how the commercial banks that assess the giving them that loan can be repaid, through a funds or whatever.
Right. Now, aside from this social unrest, the manufacturing sector, of course, is already pressured by the COVID-19 pandemic. What has business been like for your members, since Nigeria opened up its economy after the COVID-19 lockdown? Okay,
well, let me start by the PMI result that came out. I'm not here to critique CBN's PMI report, but when you look at it, that the PMI contracted to 49.4, I believe it would have been lower than that because business have not really picked up. In the month of September that we are talking about, you could recall that's where the electricity tariff was hiked. In that month, PMS price was hiked. In that month, government, central bank came up with a policy on Form M. In that month, IDEC, customs came with a policy of IDEC. The same month, all this targeted on businesses, and I'm surprised that it didn't get down to 42.6 in the contraction because the businesses, suffered a lot in the hands of government policies at that period. And if you look at that PMI report, you will see that they said that the raw material level contracted to 46 points, while production level increased to 50.0. I wonder, if the raw materials level contracted, how will the production level increase? I was asking myself while I'm on my way coming, how would that be possible? When there is no forex to import raw materials, because the CBN put a policy on from M opening, when there is no access to funds. You recall that CBN came up with intervention funds of 1 trillion naira to manufacturers. But how many of the manufacturers are accessing these loans? Banks, commercial banks came up with hurdles, to discourage manufacturers accessing this low interest rate loan from central bank, because they are now putting conditions that if you have to access this, you must get some quantum of loan from us at a ridiculous price or interest rate.
Yeah. So well, you talked about the 1 trillion naira support grant. Yes, because a lot of questions that would come to mind is, considering all these various efforts to really support the growth of the sector still accounts for less than 10% of the country's GDP. And then the question would be, is it a failure of strategy or a failure of policy?
Yes, I think it's a failure, not a failure of policy, not a failure of strategy, but a failure of some aspect of the people that will implement that policy. Yes, the policy is good. We commend government for that, thinking through, we really commend government. But leaving it in the hands of the commercial banks to implement creates a challenge, because the commercial banks are also there for business. And they are telling them that out of the interest that will go on that loan, they are not taking anything. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. They will try to become a cog in the wheel of that program. Even if the policies and the strategy to implement them are fantastic, but coming to reality, on ground, you discover that it is not taking off ground. It's a good initiative by CBN, and they could have provided a succor for commercial banks to enable them participate willingly in this process.
Now, if you say that a lot of your members have really not gained access to that money, the 1 trillion. You as an association, what kind of talk or meetings have you been having with the central bank? I want to believe that, you've been talking to them, they have been talking to you.
That's true. We are, I think about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks thereabout, we met with CBN governor on this issue. We have even written to CBN governor on the challenges we are facing with commercial banks in that aspect. We are yet to get a response from him or from them on what the plan is, to find a way around it, so that many members that are interested in having these loans to grow their industry, their businesses, have access to it.
Now, with the situation on ground now, with what we have seen, and of course, we've seen that the PMI contracted, even though you say what you're seeing should actually be worse than, what we have there on the data. Now, what are the 3 most urgent things you think the current administration, the central bank, the monetary authority, the fiscal authority should do to salvage this sector?
Well, if I have to rank it, first I will start with the alignment of monetary policy with fiscal policy. There is a disconnect between the monetary policy and fiscal policy. Minister of Finance is saying one thing, Governor of CBN is doing the other way. And then the second thing also is the forex issue. Forex issue. The central bank has to relax this from clause that they are not willing, they will no longer accept from open to a third party, because that is affecting small and medium scale enterprises. And if care is not taken, many of them will close shop by the end of this month, because the feeling I'm getting from our members is that the stock of raw materials are running out and they cannot replenish because they don't have forex to do so. Even those that have already imported these things cannot get forex to repatriate, to their to companies that gave them the raw materials in the first instance. So I'll talk about the 2. This third one is the energy issue. The price of electricity is so expensive now for an average manufacturer to survive. I thought that government could have come in and give an exception to manufacturers when there was a hike in electricity tariff, but that has not been done. Many of our members are complaining from, if you used to pay 2 million, you are now being given 8 million. How would you put that in your product and still sell, knowing that consumers have apathy because the spending skills, the spending is not there. The purchasing power is getting lower on daily basis due to inflation. So when you put that together, you see that it's a hard time for manufacturers, really.
Now, talking about electricity, I know that Manufacturers Association sometimes proposed at some point, to embark on the construction of a power plant for its members. How far has this gone? Some would say that this project is ambitious.
Well, we had some challenges along the line because of government policies on getting licensing, and also trying to discuss. We're also not willing to let go, knowing that manufacturers are their main consumers, their major consumers, But the project will soon take off the ground. I think we are working on providing power to Acme Industrial Estate. The plant is there. The gas has been connected. All the necessary things have been done. What is required now is commissioning. I think when we commission that aspect, that will show that we are really serious in providing power to our members.
Now, some analysts have accused the manufacturers of being too dependent of imported raw materials, and this is why they are not competitive. And you are talking about the challenges in the foreign exchange market, and the central bank is looking at ways, manufacturers, the country as a whole can actually look inwards.
Thank you for that question. That's an interesting argument or angle we'll have to look at. Now, when you want to produce raw materials, first you look at the commercial viability of that raw materials. How many of the people that are buying it? For instance, let me use active pharmaceutical ingredient, for instance, and you produce it in Nigeria. Will Europe buys it from you? Will Asia buys it from you, Americans? So if you are producing for Nigeria particularly, you have no market. And that does not make it commercially viable, even though you may have the raw materials, but it's not commercially viable to produce it. That's the challenge we have. And you also understand that most of these companies are multinationals that tries to take advantage of economic of scales to buy raw materials from a lower source than trying to develop it themselves. There is, yes, I agree with central bank on being patriotic, trying to develop this, but that is basically government initiatives. If government can provide incentives for these manufacturers, for someone to invest in raw material development, that person will take that advantage of it, of the incentives, and build the raw materials. The central bank is coming with all kinds of policies, tomato policy, dairy policy, and all that. But we are not yet there. We can't stop importation of milk now because we have cows. How far can our cows go in producing milk for us? What is per cow yield? That's what we are going to look at. The countries that are self-sufficient in milk, how many years did it take them to get there? The countries that are self-sufficient in fruit juice, how many years did it take them to get there? And that's what we are going to look at. What was government incentives to those sectors for them to produce that product for the manufacturing to take advantage of?
Well, I guess what the manufacturers probably would have to do is to continue to engage the government, engage the fiscal authority, engage the monetary authority. And let's just hope that with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement coming up in January, yes, we will be ready to actually be competitive and fit into that AFTA agreement. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruchi, for your time on the program.
Thank you for having us.